Attendee set, all that good. Polls, okay, let's go ahead. So I want to welcome everyone to today's presentation, Peer-to-Peer Fundraising Integration with Salesforce. This is going to kick off the first of several Salesforce-focused webinars that Neon One is going to be putting on this year. We're really excited about this series as we kind of have a drumbeat to Dreamforce, as we like to call it. Before we dive in with today's really nice overview of an important series of questions to ask yourselves when you're thinking about peer-to-peer fundraising integration with Salesforce is some basic webinar housekeeping. So first, this is being recorded. We'll be obviously cleaning things up to get rid of the goofy banter in the beginning and to dive in right into the content. We'll then be turning around and putting this into our YouTube channel. There'll be an opportunity for some follow-up. We're going to ask you a nice survey question on your interest in terms of learning more about what we've been talking about today. There is going to be time for questions as well, kind of deeper dive there. You know, as we kind of go through today's presentation, we do have members of the Neon One team who can answer kind of the basic audio visual questions. You know, there is a phone number, for instance, where people can call in and listen. You don't have to necessarily use your computer. You know, there is a handout of today's slides that you'd be able to actually check out too. So these are things that we're here to help. We're excited for this content, and let's go ahead and kind of dive into what we're going to be doing today. So first and foremost, today's agenda, I'm going to be your MC today. My name is Tim Sarantonio. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at Neon One, so I help coordinate our relationship with Salesforce as well as consultant partners like Cathexis partners. You know, I'm going to be here to kind of help steward us through today's presentation, but we're going to get into the actual subject matter experts in terms of today. Then we're going to dive into kind of the basics of what we should think about for when you're mapping out your Salesforce integration around your peer-to-peer campaigns. And what are the practical applications of this? You know, what can we turn around and actually leverage the different technology? Salesforce is a powerful enterprise platform. And so being able to pair that with the full suite of tools is something that we want to kind of touch on a few elements as it relates to peer-to-peer. Now, Rallybound's been a long-time ISV partner of Salesforce, one of the first peer-to-peer integrations that were certified by Salesforce. And so we're really excited to kind of show this in a practical way. Neon One, whenever we do our presentations like this, you know, we want to talk about so-called best practices, but everybody has their own unique situations that we want to address, especially when we get into mapping. And so being able to understand the options that you have in a practical live environment is something that we're going to actually be able to show you how we do it. So we have a few different elements that we're going to talk about. So we're going to get a little deep, you know, geeky in terms of the data, and also be here to answer any questions. We have, you know, two experts with us today. A little bit about who Neon One is. We are a technology ecosystem that provides technology specifically for mission-driven organizations. And we've helped raise over $11 billion to date, serving over 35,000 nonprofits. And through our Rallybound program, we're able to leverage peer-to-peer fundraising for some of the biggest organizations in the world, such as Michael J. Fox Foundation, as an example. So really nice ability for us to deliver an ecosystem that can work with any database of record. And our approach is working with experts. So over the coming months, we're going to be debuting even more resources around how to optimize your Salesforce integration. And that's going to come in the form of consultant and implementation partners that we've curated, that we trust, Salesforce trusts, Mark Becker being one of them, who will be meeting shortly officially, as well as other ISV partners that we think pair really well when curating that full experience, not just with peer-to-peer, but beyond around the Salesforce ecosystem itself. So really excited about what we're going to be debuting over the next few months. So with that said, I'm gonna kind of zip it up and hand it over to our speakers. I want to welcome our subject matter expert on just everything Salesforce and peer-to-peer, Mark Becker. And then, of course, Brian Benici. Is that Benici or Benici? Brian.
It's actually your choice. Depends which parent you ask. So
nailed it. Okay. So, and Brian is an absolute expert in terms of our Salesforce configuration on the Rallybound team. So Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll hand it on over to Brian for a quick intro, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So I founded Cathexis Partners coming up on 12 years ago now, and been doing a lot in the peer-to-peer fundraising space since then, and prior to that, actually, helping hundreds of nonprofits with their thousands of campaigns over the years. And we've been involved with Salesforce and been a Salesforce partner since it was a Salesforce Foundation. So 10 plus years or so. We've been a Salesforce partner as well, and congrats to Tim and the Neon and Rallybound team for being up on the App Exchange as an ISV, because I know that's not an easy process. Us consulting partners have an easier path, but I know you all have to do a lot of legwork and verification and all that, and that's not an easy process. So you did your time, you crossed your T's and dotted your I's and got it done, and we're happy to partner with you.
Awesome. And maybe a little bit about you.
That's all on me.
Okay, Brian, your turn for a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, well, one of the nice things about the way that our product is built is that while I might be an expert on this thing, it doesn't take much to be an expert on. So I work with all of our clients as they sort of go through implementation, and about 40% of our clients use Salesforce, often selecting us because of our integration. And it's a 5-step process, most of which is pretty easy, and even the complex part should be easy. It's just that you have a lot of options. So I'll explain that later on.
So, well, actually, we thought we'd start off with a poll, which is basically, are you using Salesforce currently? So we're going to go ahead and launch that poll. Interested to understand the crowd in terms of their current Salesforce usage. You know, whenever you put out a webinar on a specific platform, it's always interested to understand who's actually using it and things of that nature. So just want to kind of poll the crowd, get a little understanding of your current Salesforce usage right now. I think we also have it. Okay. All right. And so far, the crowd is showing a solid yes in terms of the number of Salesforce usage. So I'm going to go ahead. We got some good updates. Oh, okay, we got at least one no. Okay, I'm going to give this a little bit more time. Oh, we are heading fast toward 100% voting. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out right now. So vast majority of the crowd, Mark and Brian, 69% say yes. They have. I'm going to go ahead and share that poll so people can see it too. Most people are indeed using Salesforce. Some haven't, but they haven't fully committed. At least one person is either considering or not using Salesforce currently. So, guys, when you hear that type of feedback, what does that tell you in terms of just kind of where we
sound not surprising, you know? Yeah, we see a lot of organizations out there taking advantage of the Power of 10 grant and getting the free licenses to dabble and checking into whether or not it's, you know, they're ready to make the move. Migrating, you know, your CRM, your data, even if it's some spreadsheets to something else, you know, it's not a pleasant journey. You know, it's you're happy once you get to the destination, but that is not one of the times that the fun is in the journey. Just like any migration is never fun, but it's well worth it in 9 out of 10 cases. So I highly recommend checking it out more, and hopefully we can answer any questions you might have today as we go.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in terms of the Salesforce structure and specific to peer-to-peer. We're not going to be talking about Salesforce in general. We're going to be talking about how it relates to peer-to-peer fundraising. So Mark, why don't you take it away in terms of setting the stage for how we should start to think about this?
Sure. Again, you know, thinking of Salesforce as your database of record, yeah, if everything is fully cooking and working as it's intended to be, everything should be communicating with your database of record, and the database of record should be sending out the appropriate information to those different point solutions you might have. right? So you might have several different what you consider best-in-class point solutions, like a peer-to-peer fundraising tool, like Rallybound, email marketing tool, events, registration, advocacy. You might have several of those all in one platform, or all using different point solutions, and hopefully all connecting into your database of record. And I often hear that some version of the version of the term, source of truth, and I don't really believe in that. I think there's not just one true source of truth for your data. There should be peer-to-peer specific information in your peer-to-peer fundraising tool. There should be email marketing specific details in your email marketing tool, and they won't exist in your database of record quite often, because you don't necessarily need to see in your database of record every little email sent out of a peer-to-peer fundraising participant to their friends and family, or how many, whether or not they updated their personal page. Maybe you need that in your database of record, but you definitely need that in your peer-to-peer fundraising tool. Your email marketing needs your open rates, who's a hard bounce, a soft bounce, who's opened and clicked through, but you probably don't need that level of detail in your database record. Potentially you do, but the main thing is you need certain information tracking through to it. So when you're looking to look at your overall engagement with a constituent, both from the organizational perspective, how much are you engaging with them, but more importantly, or equally importantly, how much are they engaging with you? Are they, for example, a past peer-to-peer participant as well as a registered for a current campaign? Are they also, did they attend your gala this last gala season? And are they also an advocate or a volunteer, and further engage with your organization? And those are the people you should really target to see if you can, if you are supporting them first and foremost, thanking them, appreciating them, and communicating to them properly. So that's what Salesforce offers up, is a way to track all the information and make sure the information is getting to where it needs to be. So let's first of all break this down and talk about data flow. I'm going to cover the basics, and then you'll have a great example with what Brian's going to show you here later on. But let's talk about, first of all, data flow. What direction or directions does the data flow? Does it go just from, hopefully, the peer-to-peer platform at least to Salesforce, or does it also come from Salesforce back to the peer-to-peer platform for some reason? Again, you might be importing third-party email information from a third-party email tool directly into your peer-to-peer platform in some cases, or that email marketing might be built into the peer-to-peer campaign platform, or it might go through Salesforce to get back into that peer-to-peer. But it's important to know what direction your data flows. That's the first step. Moving on. How often does it flow? Is it in real time, or what's considered near real time? Basically, every minute or every couple minutes, it does a refresh. Is it hourly, daily? Is it custom, kind of ad hoc? Whenever you can schedule it as frequently as you wish to. It's all customizable in the sync, or is it more manual? Custom is actually another nice fancy way of saying manual in some cases, depending on your sales agent you might talk to for different platforms. So be very aware of what custom means. Is that configurable, or is it you're just pulling a CSV file out of one system and putting it into another? Very important to know. And then what objects are we talking about, and where objects and what fields within those objects is the data flowing from the peer-to-peer platform into Salesforce, and potentially vice versa? Which ones is it touching? Have you customized or configured your Salesforce environment to not have those fields or those objects, and are using those objects in a standard way? The Nonprofit Success Pack requires that certain objects are used in certain ways, and those assumptions are held true to go through the certification process to be able to be an ISV that is syncing up with Salesforce.org. You need to make sure you're communicating. They need to make sure that those objects are not messed with or misconfigured or misappropriated for other uses. So things like your campaigns are used for your different peer-to-peer campaigns, contacts and opportunity contact roles are used, accounts are used, opportunities, soft credits for connections and relationships between the donors and the participants. So you should really know, how all that data is being used, and platforms like Rallybound use them in the manner they're intended, and it all flows nicely and plays well with other applications. All right, so let's get into the kind of details of what to focus on. Sorry, Tim, you were going to say something?
I was basically going to say the same thing you just said. So this is our place for practical application. Still, again, thinking about things from a generalized standpoint that any organization can pick up.
Yeah, so one of the important things is emails, right? There's these days, there's also SMS or text messaging, there's social media, there's ad buys, there's potentially direct mail, there's all these different channels you might use in addition, but at the very least, email communications is still very important, and baked in and built into a lot of these platforms. And people still expect to receive emails. And so you need to know what emails are sent from the peer-to-peer platform. In some cases, it's just autoresponders, like receipts for registration. Maybe some other can be configured to include some automatic triggers like X number of days after registering or X number of days before the event, or receiving an email once you receive your first donation or once you receive a certain threshold in dollars raised. And then there's others that allow for full email suite inside of their platform, allowing for coaching and fundraising emails. So that in that case, it's kind of all in one. Sometimes they decide to go with or recommend third-party email integrations with Salesforce's Pardot, Marketing Cloud, or Constant Contact, or MailChimp, or Emma, or Campaign Monitor, or one of those tools. And if so, you should be aware of, okay, what does that data synchronization look like? And does it go through the peer-to-peer platform, or does it go through Salesforce? And how much, how synchronized can that and automatic can that sync be? And what data flows across, so that when you get to sending emails, it's easy for you to segment your audience and also to really personalize the message. Again, if someone's a past participant and possibly even a team captain as a past participant, and you go to email them, you want to possibly, give them credit for that, acknowledge them and thank them for being a past team captain, and invite them back to do that again. And if you don't have that information synced up with your email platform, that's going to be a lot harder to do or require a lot more uploading and synchronization of custom groups or segments to get that done. So you really want to know how deep your integration goes and really consider your communication strategy, so that when you look at the email platforms and the peer-to-peer platforms and how everything looks, you want to see what it's going to take for your team to build a really good, engaging email communications calendar that isn't going to take hours and hours to support. And then when it comes to reports and dashboards, you can do a ton in Salesforce, and that's a great place to do it. But also look and see what is available in the different peer-to-peer tools. Again, if that's the place, if it's available and they have great reporting in there and great dashboards available, utilize them, because the detail is the detail of the data is most complete within the peer-to-peer peer-to-peer platform, but then you can get a lot out of the functionality in Salesforce very quickly and very easily. And certain reports you should just have, and certain dashboards you should just have, like year-over-year comparisons. I don't see enough organizations out there taking advantage of that. When you do have legacy events, you want to be able to look at how you're doing with registration and fundraising, 20 weeks out, 5 weeks, if it's really an endurance campaign, versus 5 weeks out versus 2 weeks out. You want to be able to compare how you're doing compared to last year, and potentially even other years or against other markets. If you're doing one in Chicago and one in New York, you want to really look at where your marketing money is being spent best, where your communications is working, and where you're getting a message out, and really want to compare apples to apples by looking at year to date and days out and weeks out from an event, so you can truly see how you're doing compared to previous years, and adjust your messaging and engagement appropriately from there.
Awesome. So we got another poll for you. We love our polls here. And we want to get a little practical. We're going to get kind of nerdy again in terms of going back to one of those earlier slides around the object layout. So we want to know, what objects are you currently mapping to when it comes to your peer-to-peer campaigns? Not too many options here, but depending on what you're using, if you're using anything, this could have a major impact on reporting. So we'll leave that poll open a little bit while, kind of Mark, I don't want to get too far into the kind of the things that Brian might talk about, but what objects are at the very minimum, like the ideal things that you should be mapping to?
Yeah, campaigns, contacts, accounts, opportunity roles, opportunity contact roles, soft credits are really important, again, because of that connection between a donor and the participant that they're supporting. Those are some of the core ones. I'm off the top of my head that I consider that pretty good for me, but I'm sure I'm missing a few.
Well, and I'm looking at our poll, and I actually should have added campaigns in there as well. That's an important one, but we did have most people are at least doing contacts, and then at least a majority are doing opportunities. So that's a pretty solid one. But I think if we were to also add campaigns or other types of things, I imagine the numbers might be going down once you add more objects.
Well, and a lot of this gets kind of chewy, right? You're getting into the boring world of data, and I can say that because I'm in there all the time. But I kind of straddle that line because you might be on here as one of the marketing folks going, I have no idea, so you're just selecting something, and that's totally fine. Main thing is somebody at your organization or somebody you're working with, be it a partner or whoever, is helping you, make sure the data is in the right place. So if that's not your role, it's good for you for not knowing. You wear enough hats, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And even the marketing folks are going to have different perspectives than like the event managers, right? In terms of the data that they
exactly, definitely.
Finance. So it's kind of depends on what you need to do. Awesome. Well, what we're going to do is, and thank you, Mark, and we want to make sure that you're still around for any questions that might come up on kind of the larger elements here. And by the way, folks, both Mark and Neon One with Rallybound are going to be a peer-to-peer forum coming up in Austin. So please say hello if you're going to be attending that.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun. What we're going to do is kind of see things in action. So a little bit about Rallybound, if you don't know about this platform, is that it is a peer-to-peer fundraising platform that's been serving Salesforce organizations for years. And so you can utilize it for campaign and events management, online forms. Michael J. Fox currently is using Neon One's Rallybound platform alongside Salesforce. So that's a good example of the type of caliber and organization that we can support. But kind of getting into some of the details on what we want to do Brian, why don't you take us through a few slides, and then we'll dive into the specifics of actually doing a show and tell here.
Yeah, that sounds great. So before we even talk about the Salesforce part, I'm just going to do a quick primer on the way you would launch on Rallybound because it relates to Salesforce. We have a platform campaign, and that is where all of your fundraising would be aggregated, and you would have your event discovery. And then we would create one or more campaign templates, optimally one to save you or your Salesforce consultant some work. And then we would create a template for a embedded or standalone donation page or ticketing page. And on each of those, you can set up your Salesforce configuration options dynamically so that when you create a future event in Rallybound through replication, you will also be able to create a corresponding campaign in Salesforce dynamically. There is an option to not do that and pre-select a campaign in Salesforce and link to Rallybound, but that's very rarely used. So that's sort of our primer. And then to come back to this sheet, yes, so we would install, we have two packages that we would install. And then we have some integration options where you set your business rules in Salesforce so that Rallybound can push data according to those. Once that's done, we would do a couple test transactions, a registration and a donation, potentially also a ticket purchase. And then you would review your data in Salesforce, see what came through, make sure everything came through as desired. And then this is where we kind of branch. About 30% of our clients are done here. They just want to use the standard package. And then for the rest of the clients, they might want to pass some information that either is not included in our package install, or they want to modify the way in which that data is passed. So maybe we pass it to a certain field and they want it in some other fashion. Does all that kind of make sense so far? Any questions?
Yeah, and I'm watching the questions field for sure, but we also then, of course, have to launch.
Cool. Awesome. Cool. So that's sort of the process in a single slide, and then we can take a deeper look at that.
And I do want to point out we have the packages that Brian is referencing, and if you get the handout, so let's say you're a current Rallybound user and this is something that you're not aware of or want to dive in further. This slide, if you actually download the handout, we've linked to the specific package installs for both custom fields and Apex Sync. So
yeah, and one note
Brian,
on that.
I don't know what this actually means. This is why I have you on the phone here.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to just pull up that slide. There it is. Perfect. So these are the links to our production packages. We also have, if you're going to work in a sandbox, we have some links that are specific to sandbox. They function much in the same way. But one of our packages is the Apex Sync package, and that's what's installing the sync. And the other package is called the Rallybound fields. And those fields are important in Rallybound because we don't do a lookup every time we write data to your Salesforce. Once like Brian Benisi at Gmail, has been identified as a match in your system, we're going to keep that match. We're going to put a user ID on there and a Rallybound user ID, and we're just going to look for that every time. Now, you have an option to override that, but one of the things that we think is good about the way we sync data is we try to keep those in line and not go through a process of treating me as a new person every time. So yeah, that's just sort of an example associated with the package. But yeah, we do periodically have updates to our packages. They are not forced updates, so we will notify you when it's available. You might test that in the sandbox and then install it in production.
Very cool.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to. There we go. So custom mapping. So this is on step 4 is where we would do any of our custom mapping. And one of the things that a lot of prospective clients sort of are not sure about is when they see this grid for custom mapping. A lot of our competitors have a self-service option. We've opted out of that because we lean heavily into something called Liquid. And essentially, I'm sure many of you are already familiar with this, but I don't know if we want to share my screen now.
I think I think we're at the time where I think we could probably start looking at things naturally. And can we just pause and talk about like how utterly cool the term Liquid is? I'm just like, I'm blown away by that term. So anyway.
Well, it's a cool feature too, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, so what you guys are seeing on my screen now is actually something from Shopify's website. Shopify built Liquid and has kept it open for everybody, and we've really embraced it. Not only do we use it in our Salesforce mapping, but it's also available within our emails. So you could conditionally message somebody who might be a survivor and registers for a walk differently than somebody who's a family member. The same thing applies to our custom mapping. So over here in the control flow tag, you can tell us conditions on which we should pass certain things to certain fields in your Salesforce environment. And it's because of that we don't really have an interface for you to do this yourself, because we can sort of use any of these features in your requests to build that in. So the way we approach that is for custom mapping. Got to refresh this because I have a suspender that keeps my computer flowing. There we go. Similar to what Tim had on his sheet, we'll just sort of take a grid of what you would like, where you would like it. Now, to go back to what Mark was talking about, he was mentioning how, like, which objects we should integrate with. So what we integrate with is all of the standard objects that are part of Salesforce. Two that weren't mentioned that we work a lot with are campaign member and the recurring donation. But if you have a custom object, the way that we generally work with that is we place data on a standard objects field, any fields you'd like to create, and then there would be a workflow to flow into that. In terms of the way that the actual configuration is managed, this is an example of a Rallybound campaign. And on here, we will log in. The connection is real-time via API. It says reconnect, but I'm actually in. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to sort of answer a bunch of questions. Now, most of these questions you can leave blank if you like our default value. So for example, donation name. If you leave it blank, it's going to be called a donation. But you might want to call it something else. So you could pop something in there, and you could even you could assemble basically using placeholders. These are examples of placeholders. So on the user, we have these. You could assemble your own, just pop over here, logic for naming a donation. The same would apply for naming a campaign. So I'm not sure if this is sort of diving in too deeply, but basically we're going to set up business rules here that are going to be used for naming moving forward. I would like to pause here to sort of ask if we have questions on this, or there are specific use cases we would like to talk about. If not, I can continue speaking more generally.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is a Q&A, folks, and especially we're here to kind of dive into real world practical questions that you have. We have people who may be Rallybound current users that want to, be better at this, or people who are looking at Rallybound. So we're checking the Q&A, and we can pass that on to Brian. Brian, I'll ping you whenever I see a question come in. But so far, why don't you keep on keeping on, and I'll let you know when somebody asks something.
That sounds great. So one of the features that we like to talk about, because we think it's pretty cool, is that we do have a built-in option of how you would like us to manage your duplicates. So would we match based on email first name, email exact last name, etc. But what I think is kind of cooler, and Mark probably thinks is cooler too, is that instead of that, we can actually latch on to your duplicate management set within Salesforce. And when we have a new record, we'll run it against that instead of just sort of the more basic options that are available out of the box. So I think that is something that is used by a fair amount of our clients, and you can also set to an alert. Another thing is if you're using NPST, we have an option on our donation form that somebody can identify their donation as affiliated with a company. And what I mean by affiliated with a company is that Brian Benisi might make a gift on behalf of Rallybound. So if I check that box, it is a company donation, then we can, through these integration options, we can create an organization account rather than a standard household account. So some of those things I think are pretty cool.
Hey, Brian,
to come down here. Go ahead.
I got a question that actually does relate to householding type stuff, and I see it on here too. So I don't know if you want to hit that question now or just kind of finish up what you were talking about.
No. It's fine. It's more useful, I think, to people if they get their questions answered. So let's do that. Yeah.
So Carly would like to know a little bit more about soft credit roles function.
Oh, it's really quiet.
Oh, how about now?
There we go.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Perfect.
Soft credit roles function to feed into household?
Yes. So it will go on the primary. So if I am the primary in the household, in Rallybound, that would manifest itself as me being the person who registered, and then I can register members of my family. I would be the primary on each of those, and they would be secondary. The soft credit would go to me if somebody made a donation to my page. But in the case that maybe I had a daughter, it went to my daughter's page, even though I managed it, would actually go to her. And then if you wanted a different process, we could use the custom mapping step to basically change that flow from how it works out of the box with the package.
So it sounds
Did
like
that answer the question?
I hope so. Carly, let us know.
Okay.
And obviously diving into your specific use case is something that the Rallybound team is here to help you with, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So why don't we keep on popping through this, and we'll engage questions as they come up like that. But that's the type of question we're looking for, folks. Very cool.
Perfect. So we can use record type IDs. If you use them in Salesforce, you can use these to sort of better report on data. One of the things that I think is pretty cool is the price book entry. So if you are using products and price books, go ahead. Oh, if you are using price books and products in Salesforce, you can place a default one in for tickets here, and that would be in the case that within our ticket builder, you did not identify a specific price book entry for the ticket. So if you had a VIP 10-seat table for a gala, you could put your own price book entry in just for that ticket, and that you can do that for every single ticket. So that can be valuable to some people. If that sounds like way too much work, you could just leave all of this blank and not use that feature and kind of grow into that feature if you would like to. In terms of in terms of basically offline donations, we have a few different options that depend on your business flow. The most common way that people use the system is that they don't put their offline donations into Salesforce through Rallybound. Rather, they upload them and use a checkbox that says, do not sync offline donations or do not push offline donations. This can be on a meta level if you check it here, or it can be on a granular donation by donation level for offline donations. Now, the way we advise people to use the system is actually the opposite. We advise people we have a bulk upload template, and for the keyers or cagers to enter that information there and then upload on a daily or a weekly basis to Rallybound, whatever their cadence is, and then just push that all over to Rallybound because our sync can theoretically save some time there. If you invert the process, you're basically doing double entry. Does that make sense? Any questions?
Mm-hmm. Actually, that was one of the things I was going to ask about is process flow about offline. So that's good that you covered it.
Yeah. It's one of those funny things where I think that though we advise a certain way, a lot of people have been doing things a certain way before they came into Rallybound. So it works either way. What we just suggest might save them a little time in the long run.
And Mark, I want to kind of ping you on that, as kind of the outside expert for this. What do you advise in situations like that from a process flow standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on their business processes and supporting what the team needs. Kind of a wishy-washy answer, but there it is.
There you go. Awesome.
Well, this item might be another one that Mark might weigh in on. We have two different options in the way that we can pass data associated with peer-to-peer fundraising to campaigns. One is that you can have a flat structure. And so that would be create just a single campaign. You'd answer yes. In that case, a solicitor, be it a team or an individual, would receive soft credit, but they wouldn't have their own sub-campaign underneath the parent event. So if the parent event was Brian's walk, and then Brian created a team Rallybound, and under there, Tim joined my team. You could have 3 tiers in Rallybound, matching 3 tiers in Salesforce, or you could have 3 tiers in Rallybound and only 1 tier in Salesforce. And Mark, I don't know if you have a preferred idea on that.
Yeah, in that case, the more the merrier. The more levels of information, the more because you're probably going to want to mine that data and use it in other ways. But again, depends on specific business processes.
Okay, cool. Great. And then another thing that sometimes people do is they have overarching, like a grandparent campaign. under which all of their peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns reside. And so you can enter that in Rallybound here in these integration options, and then whenever a new peer-to-peer campaign is created, it would reside as a child of that campaign in your Salesforce environment. As you remember earlier, I talked about how we use an ID to look and find Brian Benisi in Salesforce, and every time he makes a gift or registration, associate him with that contact. That is the option that says rely solely on an ID. Here, if you don't like that, or if you do a lot of merging and you may not retain the Rallybound ID when your merge occurs, you would just want to check don't solely rely on ID, and then we would go through that process to match each time. So you're not necessarily locked into our design. You can kind of opt out if your business processes don't meet the way that our product was designed. I think maybe pause and see what questions we have.
We did get some feedback. Carly let us know that they're also using soft credits for team captains as well. She appreciates that.
Oh, good. Yeah, awesome. And that is an option. So you can have the team captain receive soft credit for the donation. And that's an important thing in Rallybound is that everything rolls up, but it doesn't roll down. And it will match that in Salesforce. So if a gift is made to a team's page, it doesn't roll down to each of the team members, but rather if a gift is made to my page on a team that Tim created, then the totals will be reflected at the team level, but not. They don't go the other way.
And Brian, I don't know if I'm going to throw you a curveball here by asking this, but do you have kind of a front-end example of what that might look like, when somebody's actually walking through and looking at team structure, as like a donor or something like that?
Hopefully. Let's see how good I can be. I should have this. Let's go to an event and we'll find a team. We'll go to Orange County.
The peer-to-peer. I love it.
A peer-to-peer event. Yep, and we'll go to the Empire team. Sounds like somebody likes Star Wars. And so this team has these members. It looks like most of the donations to this team's page have been to the team. And the reason I say that is when I look at the team member list, a very small percentage of the amount raised is attributed to specific people. These are all the team members. Does that kind of exemplify that?
So somebody's donating directly to the team page as opposed to the down element. So in this case, how does that translate over to Salesforce?
Yeah, so in this case, Teresa would have a sub-campaign under the Empire team, which would be under the peer-to-peer Orange County. And the roll-ups would work sort of ladder, like right up the chain, but Teresa would only reflect 200. And then on the case of the team, it looks like raised, if I can do math, the team raised 20,000 on its own page, and then 520 was raised from the children campaigns below. And so the team captain would be receiving, if you check that box, it looks like Darth Vader would have a soft credit in the amount of $20,000. And then Teresa would have 200.
Bad work for somebody who's raised $0 individually themselves. So.
Yeah, Darth is having a good day because he's getting all of the credit for the activity on the team page, and that may be because as the team captain, he may be promoting the team page more than his personal page. That often happens.
Awesome, very cool. Thank you for the slight divergence.
Absolutely. I also wanted to pull up this document. And this is something that if you started working with us and you were in implementation, we would share this at the outset. And what this outlines, it's mostly specific to NPST, but we have a similar grid that we work with about 5 or 6 different flavors of Salesforce. What it says is anything in the blue, these are basically definitions of the fields in our standard package that you would be installing. And so we have the field name, the behavior, type, etc. And then we have another section here in orange where we highlight things that people often ask us to use custom mapping for. These are just suggestions. You don't have to use these, but these are the most commonly requested ones. But in terms of the custom mapping, it could really be anything. So we could have a birth date field on the front end where somebody enters the birth date, and you could say, if is greater than 18 years as of today, send a value of true to this checkbox or something in Salesforce. So this is something that, if it's helpful, we can share with you either before you're a client or when you're a client.
Yeah, well, I think it's just, it helps with the management of these types of things,
Mhm.
right? Either campaign management or change management, you know, if you're shifting to a new platform or just coming on as a new staff member, understanding how your organization can be set up is vital. So being, you know,
Yeah.
having those types of things really helps people feel much more comfortable with like just getting right to it, as opposed to,
Yeah.
wait, how is this even set up? So that I'm, you know, very thankful that you shared that document.
Absolutely. And so usually something that people don't want to talk about when they're talking about their integration is errors. But I actually think we have a pretty good way to handle errors. And of course, since this is a demo site, we don't have any errors showing. But one of the things that I think is cool is that if you come into an event and you want to see what you're going to receive an email, first of all, if there is a sync error. But the thing I like best about it is that we actually show the response from Salesforce in the error. And the most frequent types of errors we get are that there's field validation in Salesforce. So example, first name can only be 25 characters and somebody entered 26 characters on Rallybound. So you would get that error associated with that specific donation ID. There would actually be here on the donation ID here, it would be in blue. I could click and go to it, and then I could edit. So I would probably remove one of the characters in the name, maybe the last one, and then I can resync. In addition, if you want to avoid that situation from happening and you know what your validation rules are in Salesforce, you can actually install your own JavaScript file on a Rallybound site. And then you can manage acceptable field lengths to match what you have in your Salesforce CRM. So I just thought that was a pretty cool feature. That's pretty much my show. I don't know if we want to hop into the questions.
Yeah, let's see if we have any questions. I'll pop back on over to the slides themselves. We've got a little bit of Q&A time and some time. And we also do have Mark here as an expert for just kind of general consultation best practices as well. Yeah, any questions, folks?
I love the error checking and the fact that you can have the JavaScript validate or kind of back up your rules so that it kind of stops them from happening in the first place. That's slick.
I don't think people talk about like error stuff enough because it's going to happen, right? So like everybody
definitely.
Just, you know, they put their head in the sand and go, well, or it's the software's fault. It's like, let's take a look. Let's take a look and see.
Not normally, yeah. It's usually people. You can have a perfect system until people get involved.
Yeah.
We're always going to ruin it.
Awesome. It looks like, I mean, I think what we've done is answered everyone's questions that they've ever had about peer-to-peer in Salesforce. But seriously though, folks, we got a question. So we do have
awesome.
Do you have a listing of what sync errors could mean in terms of like basic definitions for like null object, refunded, deleted, maybe inside the knowledge base or forum, something like that, Brian?
The sync errors?
Yeah, like the definitions.
Well, actually, we don't, because they're actually provided from the local instance of Salesforce, so whatever is on your side. And so they're not going to be the same they're generally not going to be the same from customer to customer. We do have, if you have something that you don't recognize, we can help you identify what it might be pointing to, because sometimes the terms are kind of strange. Mark, I don't know if you might be better to answer that. Is there a dictionary that you guys create when you're doing an implementation that people could reference?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to work with clients and putting those codes up because it is so custom to specifically how they set it up, but it's usually really implementation by implementation.
As an example, I could share that. For example, if the string length is too long, it will say something like Boolean string error, and then it would have the field name and then say length. So they often are a bit instructive, but still kind of confusing at the same time.
Yeah,
but if you have a system that's kind of a bunch of random ones, it can be cleaned up pretty quickly by just getting in there with an admin and helping you decode that and rename them.
Yeah, again, attention sometimes is not paid to the proper error details as well. So that's also important too. So getting the admin involved, always a good idea.
Yeah, and one other thing that just I was thinking about that often is asked is, do I share the sync queue with other clients? And you do and you don't. So each client has sort of their own queue, and the reason for that is different versions of Salesforce have different sort of rates with which outsiders can push data in. And so, for example, that rate is very quick in, say, NPSP. It's a little slower in, say, LCRM. And so we don't want to queue up a nonprofit A in a queue with nonprofit B if nonprofit B has a slower rate. So you would have your own rate, and they're almost always going to go in real time. Unless you were to get like 500 donations in a minute, then there would be a slight queue based on the capacity of reception in your Salesforce environment.
Very cool. Right, coming up to almost the full time. We'll hang around for just a little bit more in terms of any questions. Want to put out a resource for folks too. Gift for you, Neon One at the institutional level has actually partnered with Leaderosity from the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance in terms of their entire training course program. So this is more for high-level trainings for staff on operational excellence, designing programs, diversity, equity, inclusion. And we are able to get you 10% off of any of these training courses. So definitely check that out if there's a professional development opportunity there. The fundraising ones may also help toward any kind of certification credits that you may need too. So just wanted to make sure this is kind of something that we're putting out for as an exciting resource for all people who are attending our webinars as well. All right, so going back, we do have another question. How frequently does the sync occur, and do you ever encounter any issues with the Salesforce API limits? So Brian, I'm going to throw that to you.
It depends, actually. So some clients do have limits on their API, and there's a few roles actually, or a few options here that save you some. So I think one of them is don't push updates. So an update would be if I went in and I edited somebody's billing address later. I guess that takes some API credits, and so you have the option to save on credits by not pushing those updates. There's a few different fields like that. Generally, I think it had been more of an issue like when we started our relationship with Salesforce. We seem not to be running into as many clients with that issue now, but we still have the tools to manage it through those types of options to not sort of pass updates and those types of things. Not sure if that answers the question, but yes, it can be an issue, but we have a few options to help mitigate.
All right. Well, folks, I want to thank everybody today for coming and checking out our first of several Salesforce integration focus webinars that we're going to be doing. Mark, I want to personally thank you for your expertise in terms of just kind of framing the things that we should be thinking about when we're walking through peer-to-peer data along with Salesforce. And Brian, I want to thank you for the deep dive on Rallybound. We are here. This is kind of the Neon One contact information, but the Rallybound team in particular is able to dive in and either answer your questions as a client, such as Carly, or if you're looking at us, we're definitely here to have an account executive connect with you. Mark, Brian, any final thoughts before we sign off today?
Yeah, just thanks for the opportunity, and never hesitate to shout with any questions. And yeah, look forward to seeing folks in Austin next week if you can be there.
Yeah, can't wait. Given that I'm staring at snow all over the ground, I cannot wait to personally fly down there. So hope to see you there. Both Mark and the Rallybound team, as well as myself, will be there. Happy to connect in person. And also, if you go to neon1.com, you can check out Mark's profile as a officially certified partner in Rallybound and beyond. So very, very happy to have everyone join us today. And we'll be in touch. We'll start to get this recording up online, and have a great day.
Take care.